Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling. And man, I really appreciate you guys checking the video out and making some time to watch it. I know that everybody's got lots of YouTube videos to watch out there and lots of things to do. So thanks a lot for swinging by for a little bit. Guys, today I'm going to share with y'all what I consider one of the darkest little dirty secrets of professional bass fishing that I've ever seen since I've been in it, since I was almost 40 years of fishing tournaments. So I'm going to get into that because I think something like this needs to be brought to awareness for the history of the sport. Also, I'd be curious to get your guys' opinion on it too after we get into this. And also, guys, before we get started, just want to invite everybody out there, if you haven't consider becoming a channel member of Intuitive Angling here. It's a great way to support the channel, and members get extra videos every week that aren't seen by the public, and also some access to my personal email address for your fishing questions. So if you're interested, just go to my Intuitive Angling homepage and you see a little thing that says join down there, and that gives you all the information in becoming a channel member and supporting the channel like that. Much appreciated. Okay guys, so we're going to get into this. What I'm going to talk about here is what happened during probably the first 10 years that FLW came on the scene. Now, for a lot of you guys that aren't familiar with it, you know, Bassmaster was pretty much the sole tournament organization up until 1996. And in 1996, Irwin Jacobs founded the FLW Tour. And the FLW Tour quickly, for all practical reasons, it became sort of like a superior premier tour above Bassmaster, simply because of the huge influx of money that came into the sport. Walmart was aligned with the sport. A lot of the vendors, well, you know, probably close to 100 Walmart vendors became sponsors of tournament fishing on the non-endemic side. Now, this was the first time that companies that didn't have anything to do with fishing tackle became tournament sponsors. And as a result, it put a tremendous amount of money into the sport. Now, what happened during this time frame is it was set up where if you wanted to, you could fish the Bassmaster Top 150 circuit, which was the premier, sort of like the elite series of its day. And you could have fished the FLW Tour, which was a tour level circuit, you know, entry fee wise, and it had bigger payouts than Bassmaster. FLW for many years had bigger payouts. They paid $1 million for the Forrest Wood Cup. And I was one of those anglers out there, guys. There was about a dozen of us that were hardcore tournament guys, and from about 1997 up until about early 2000s, I fished both circuits. I fished the Bassmaster Top 150 and the FLW Tour at the same time. And there's a few other guys out there doing the same thing, but not very many, because there was a tremendous amount of traveling involved. So anyway, I got to see firsthand the top circuits on both circuits. I was around those dudes every tournament. You know, the FLW Tour guys, Bassmaster Top 150 guys, and at this time, FLW had what was called the FLW Cup, which was the biggest payout in fishing. And the Bassmaster Top 150 tournament had still had the Bassmaster Classic, but they couldn't compete with FLW on the money. So anyway, as a result, it attracted a tremendous amount of hammers over to FLW. There was so many, pros that would jackpot the tournaments. There would be regional hammers. There was just a bunch of just unbelievable fishermen. Guys like, Andy, I'm going to use these two guys' examples here, Andy Morgan and Scott Martin, that fish the FLW Tour exclusively. So anyway, the little secret that I'm going to talk about here. Once FLW started getting a foothold, super, super strong, which was around the year 2000, it became more competitive than the Bassmaster Top 150 circuit. And I can say that because I was fishing both of them. The caliber of competition was higher on the FLW Tour than it was on the Bassmaster Top 150 circuit. There was no doubt about it, the level of competition. It's not like now where everybody has been educated by the internet and, LiveScope has opened up a segment of the population that doesn't know much about fishing that can be competitive. Back then, there was a pretty big talent gap between professional anglers and what we call AAA anglers now. Now there's there's no gap, guys. There's no difference between the skill level today in a MLF Toyota Series tournament as there is over the Bassmaster Elite Series. There's no skill difference. It's the same thing. You might as well have the BFL or the Toyota Series guys fishing the Elite Series are just as good. But back then there wasn't. There was a big skill separation. And given this, simply because FLW, had more money in it, they had bigger money and more sponsorship opportunities, the better anglers were fishing the FLW Tour, the hammers were. But here's the little secret that we're going to get around to what I'm talking about. During this time frame when all the hammers were migrating to FLW and it became much more difficult to excel and stand out in FLW because of the competition, the industry ignored that. The media, the bass fishing media back then, and the industry did not give the FLW Tour the credit it deserved for the level of competition that it had. There was almost like the industry had a prejudice against FLW, and they started, and for all practical purposes, the industry, the endemic part of the industry, like your boats and motors, tackle, all that type of stuff, and the press, which was back then, this was before the internet, they gave all the attention and all the benefits and all the money, from the endemic side to the Bassmaster circuit, because the industry did not feel that FLW was a legitimate circuit. Therefore, the anglers that were excelling over on the FLW Tour did not get the notoriety. Guys, I want to tell you that two of the biggest injustices in the sport fell upon two anglers. A guy named Andy Morgan. If you bass fish, Andy Morgan's name needs no explanation. And Scott Martin. Scott Martin is more well known because of his, social media presence, and he fishes the Elite Series now. But guys, I want to tell you something right now for the people that weren't there at the time. There was a period about a decade where Andy Morgan and Scott Martin were absolutely dominating on the FLW Tour. They were winning championships, they were winning tournaments, they were winning Angler of the Years, they were getting more top tens than anybody else. And by and large, the industry ignored them. It was absolutely shameful, because if you would have taken two dudes on the Bassmaster Top 150 circuit that would have had, that would have had the same type of success that Andy Morgan and Scott Martin were enjoying on the FLW Tour, you'd read about them every day. They'd be on the front page of every Bassmaster magazine. They would be getting all type of sponsor offers and that type of stuff. But it didn't happen to Andy Morgan and Scott Martin, along with other anglers too. There's also a bunch of other anglers that fell in that same category. And it was almost like, I was really involved with the industry at that time. And I would talk to some of these companies like the endemic side fishing, companies, and they just basically didn't care. They did, even though it was more competitive at FLW. It was harder to stand out. There were better anglers. The money was bigger. Everything about it at the time, indicated that it was a premium circuit. The fishing industry did not give a crap. They gave the best deals to the Bassmaster guys. The Bassmaster guys got all the press. Bassmaster promoted the anglers. FLW didn't promote the anglers. They promoted the organization. And as a result, there was about a decade there where a bunch of guys that really deserved to be household names in the sport were not. You didn't even know who they were simply because they fished FLW. Now, they were making more money than the guys at Bass through winnings, but they weren't through any other type of endorsements or sponsorships out there. And I always found this, because I was involved with it, guys. I was on both sides of it. I found this a tremendous injustice in the sport. I just probably want, as far as the tournament angler goes, the guys that were over there on FLW exclusively, not so much for guys like myself that were fishing both circuits, but even though I qualified for 9 Forest Wood Cups, and I actually won 3 FLW tournaments if you would take in the fact that cumulative weight, because I finished second in 3 different FLW Tour events where I had the most cumulative weight over 4 days. But back then they had a cut where you cut to 0 after the top 10, top 5 days, and didn't work out. But anyway, the point of the video is, you know, I saw both ends of it. I saw, you know, what was going on with that. And eventually, like I said, it died out because FLW started going down the tubes when Walmart started pulling out. They lost a lot of the vendor support. They lost a lot of the money. They lost a lot of the status that came with the FLW tour that was surrounded by money once Walmart started distancing themselves from the FLW tour. And eventually, after about 2000, you know, 8 or 9 or something like that, they just sort of got flushed down the toilet a little bit for a variety of different reasons. But anyway, guys, what happened here and why I wanted to make this video on why it was the darkest period is there was basically a generation of anglers there that this went on for about a decade, that their career never got the notoriety that it deserved. If they would have had those same careers on the Bassmaster side, they would have been set for the rest of their lives. They would have been established in the sport as bona fide superstars, and that would have had all the perks and privileges that went along with that. But simply because they chose to fish the FLW Tour over the Bassmaster Tour, they never got that notoriety. And a lot of this, guys, it wasn't as simple as a matter of just choosing to support bass or choosing to support FLW. Back then, you got to realize that there was a lot of sponsor alignments that kept you in one or the other. It's not like that as much anymore back then, but back then you had companies that were aligned with one side or the other. And if you didn't fall in line as a tournament angler with the companies that supported you, you didn't get that support. So you were sort of forced into the position to gravitate towards those circuits that, you know, were being sponsored by their prospective sponsors out there. The fishermen were just sort of put in a pretty tough, you know, situation like that. But anyway, I got thinking about Andy Morgan and Scott Martin and about how they were such dominating forces for about a decade, and they did not get the credit they deserve. And I think it sort of sucks for them out there. But anyway, I just wanted to share that little piece of history with you guys out there. There's a lot of stuff in the sport that nobody ever talks about. That's sort of one of it. A lot of different reasons for that. I mean, we could go into another video as far as how that manifested and how it could have been avoided. But you know, it happened and it was what it was, and everybody had to deal with that. So anyway, guys, just wanted to pass that along. Hope you all are doing good, and we'll talk later.